All right. Well, over the weekend, I had a chance to sit down with a friend of the show, Tucker Carlson, for a wide-ranging interview on a number of topics. But most notably, we talked about the January 6th video footage that was released to his show and his producers, and had a chance to go through a lot of that data and video, 44,000 hours of footage. And one of the big lingering questions, of course, in all of this is about the federal involvement on that day. So here now is my interview with Tucker Carlson on January 6th. I do want to talk about January 6th. So the January 6th footage, when Kevin McCarthy came to you and your team about going through this footage, did he ever, we're talking about caveats and conditions, what you just talked about with Fox, did Kevin McCarthy come to you with any sort of caveats or conditions? Chuck Schumer has said, that Tucker's been cherry picking things he wants to show on the show, which is laughable, of course, because in my opinion, we got to see already cherry-picked coverage during the January 6th hearing, so it's pretty hilarious and hypocritical to me. But anyway, your response to these cherry-picking comments, and were there sort of any conditions about here, we're going to hand over 44,000 hours of footage. What was your thought on that? I mean, knowing you, like, holy shit, what? We're going to look at 44,000 hours of footage?
Well, we've been pushing for it since the first week. One of my children was in the building when that happened.
Wow.
One of my kids works in the Congress and called me. I was getting my hair cut. Ashley Babbitt had just been shot. He heard the gunshots because he was right there. As an employee, not as a protester,
right,
to be clear. But so I had been interested in it. Of course, I'm from Washington, so I had been interested in it. And since the first week, I had said we should, let's find out what really happened. Everyone's characterizing it, and my instinct as a journalist, but just also as a person, is let's know more. And they never turned it over. And for the record, I had been highly, highly critical of McCarthy, of Kevin McCarthy, for the last, I don't know, ever since I've been on TV, I've been critical of McCarthy. So we're not friends, for sure. Why did he give it to my show? Probably because I asked. I think we're the only people who asked. Maybe there were others. I'm not aware of anyone else who asked. We asked. And here's the process in one sentence. We sent a bunch of producers up to Capitol Hill. They came with a bunch of different stories they were interested in. They got a computer system, the use of the Capitol computer system, which allowed them to pull up separate rooms by, location and time. They did not have facial recognition software, unfortunately, but they had this system which allowed, what was happening in the speaker's lobby at this hour, and they watched all the tape. Many, many hours. And of the 41,000, a huge percentage, the majority, the Capitol complex is enormous. It includes the Library of Congress. There are security cameras in, closets. A lot of this stuff was just empty rooms. But of the relevant footage, we're not aware. And trust me, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out if we were being manipulated here. I don't think there's any way they could have manipulated it. It is definitely possible that we didn't find relevant footage. For sure. That's always possible. But the two things I know are no one got in our way, including the Capitol Police, who later denounced us. We ran all of our footage by Capitol Police before putting it on TV and said, just to be clear, you are saying this could be a security risk. Is it a security risk? And only in one case, he said, we don't want you to show the details of this door. So we blurred the door.
In the Jacob Chansley video. Yeah, that blurred section of the Jacob Chansley.
Exactly right. And I announced that on the air. That's the only change we made. But we vetted this, not because I thought it was a security risk. It's a public building that has tours through it every day. I thought the whole thing was ridiculous. So this security risk bullshit. But I went along with it anyway, just to say that we did. Okay? So we could never be accused of putting anyone's life at risk, absurd as that claim is. And then we put it on the air. The main problem we had was we didn't have facial recognition software. So I'm allowing for the possibility, I would say the distinct possibility, that we missed stuff. I'm sure we missed a lot of stuff. We did our best, and we spent a long time doing it, but 3 weeks. And the guys who did it, the producers who did it, were just absolutely fried. I saw them when they finished, and they they both looked like they went through a war. Just like staring at a screen for 3 weeks is a lot. But no, we had full cooperation from Capitol Police and from the Speaker's office. But what we couldn't do, which is the main thing I wanted to do, which was show that there were FBI agents in the crowd. And there were, and the FBI has admitted that. But it's obvious to me they played a pivotal role. Ray Epps clearly was working for somebody. He was not a pure civilian. he encouraged violence, and then the January 6th committee and Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson and Adam Schiff, they all defended him. He's their friend. What? He's not an insurrectionist. He's an ally. Like, explain that. It violates common sense. Okay,
Right.
but we couldn't answer a lot of these questions because we couldn't identify the people positively, and because we couldn't put their video on the screen, because what if we're wrong? I mean, I
Right.
tried to be as responsible as we could be. Like, there were a lot of things going on there, as you know, that were clearly part of something that was not organic. It was very obvious. Guys with earpieces, breaking things, and then running away when they're filmed. Like, what is that? And some of these people are so obviously cops. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, you know?
Right.
Some like bodybuilder type with short hair and a MAGA hat. And he's kind of, oh, spare me. A guy with a gun. You know, this was, you know, I know what's going on here. A lot of this was clearly influenced by federal agents or informants. It was, okay? But I didn't want to suggest that someone was a federal agent or informant unless I knew for a fact, because you really could get someone in trouble, right? If you're like, this is the guy, and like, but we don't know. I do know it's very clear that something very strange is going on with Ray Epps. We've named him repeatedly. We've invited him on the show repeatedly. I mean, don't lie to my face. Like, the Ray Epps thing is
Right.
You know, isn't organic. Sorry.
Well, and we know from the Proud Boys trial this week that an FBI agent was caught lying on the stand in front of a judge, right? Turns out that the FBI hid evidence from defense attorneys. I mean, this came out in trial. This is not just us, bullshitting here. And that according to the defense attorneys, unless they're lying in this, and that's possible, there was initially thought maybe there were criminal informants there that wanted this information scrubbed, removed from the records. We now know that it actually might have been an agent who wanted this information scrubbed from the records. And of course, we're wondering, oh my gosh, in these 41 hours that Tucker's going to have here, will we be able to see any more evidence of the Fed's involvement? So it appears without that facial recognition, what's the next step then? If we don't have that, what will happen with this footage? Will anyone else be able to kind of go through it with facial recognition? Will Congress be able to do it?
What you need is crowdsourcing here. I mean, you need this to be in as many hands as possible. McCarthy has said, and I don't have ownership of this footage. It's publicly owned, of course. It's not owned by the Congress. They don't own anything. This is like, it's insane, actually, how they treat the U.S. government like they own it. I mean, that's like your housekeeper pretending she owns your bank account. Like, these are our servants, okay? But they get these attitudes, and it's hard to disabuse them of them. But he has said, you know, we're going to turn this over to the public, and that can't come soon enough, as far as I'm concerned. We're a primetime TV show. We're not, you know, in the fabled news division. We're an opinion show, so, you know, we've kind of reached the limits, and it was only our show. Like, there was no other element of the company I work for, and there was no other news organization helping in any way. So I'm not whining, but we've kind of done what we could do. And from my perspective, like, the core claims about January 6th were a lie. It was not a violent insurrection, a deadly insurrection. It was a violent political demonstration, one of many in the year in which it took place. From January of 2020 to January of 2021, there were a lot of violent political demonstrations, including one at the White House where cops were injured, than at January 6th. Though if we could kind of leave it there and stop lying about it, I'm not defending vandalism or hooliganism or violence at January 6th. Of course not. I abhor that. Just don't tell me it's the same as 9/11. If you start talking like that, if you start lying to me, I'm going to push back. Clearly, Nancy Pelosi wanted this to happen. There was a lot of intel that it was going to happen. That intelligence was kept from line officers at the Capitol Police. I know that because I've talked to them, and including some of their supervisors, and they all say the same thing. We were not given this intelligence. Well, why is that? They were the front line in this. Why would you keep it from them? And of course, the answer is you would only do that if you wanted it to be ugly and discrediting for the political party associated with it. And that's obvious. That's obviously what happened. So, like, I'm a conspiracy nut, right? No, I probably should be a little more. I'm way too conventional. That's my problem is that you always used to talk about UFOs when we worked together, and I'd be like, "Wow, Clayton on his UFO thing." Turned out you were totally right on all of it, and that was like a huge lesson to me. You were just more open-minded than I was, and so it's not a matter of like falling for crazy theories. It's a matter of letting the evidence guide your perceptions. Okay. Like, what are we looking at here? Take 3 steps back. What does this look like? Ray Epps telling people to commit violence, but he's not prosecuted. Okay, well, the evidence suggests that this is not what it looks like, obviously. Same with UFOs. Same with the Kennedy assassination. All these areas that are like verboten, you're not allowed to ask questions. Well, why aren't you allowed to ask questions?
Right.
And last thing I'll say is like, they're not offended by craziness. They're not offended by conspiracy. If you go on TV tonight and say, I think the earth is flat, people just laugh at you. They don't care if you think the earth is flat. It's not a threat to anyone. But if you say like, what actually happened with Building 7? Like, that is weird, right? It doesn't, like, what is that?
Right.
If you were to say something like that on television, they'd flip out. They would flip out. You'd like lose your job over that. Why? It's my country.
Right.
Is an attack on my country? Can I ask it? Like, I don't really understand. Do buildings actually collapse? No, maybe they do. I don't know. But like, why can't I ask questions about that? Anything you're not allowed to ask questions about is something you should be asking more questions about, as far as I'm concerned.
So our thanks to Tucker for joining us on the show. And the response, of course, to the January 6th video footage being released to Tucker Carlson has been, crazy on the left, freaking out like he's traitorous, treasonous for going through this video.
What surprises me that it continues to be personal about why would he do this? And very little, if not none, of the response is about why is this a conundrum? Why does this footage look different than the ones we've already seen?
Right. No discussion of that.
Which should be the discussion. Because again, I should not have a preconceived notion, given that I was not there, that it was violent, and I should not have a preconceived notion that it wasn't. I should just want to see. And he says that the only reason we have it is because we asked, and nobody else asked. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's just, they're just trying to save face. They're hugely humiliated because it just shows how doctored the footage we saw during the January 6th committee actually was. So they're like, we've got to take back that narrative or we're going to look like fools because we made it look like it was something that it absolutely was not.
So I went today to listen to Pod Save America, which is a Democratic podcast. The 2 hosts worked for the Obama administration. So anytime there is what I want to say blue MAGA, they're going to be the mouthpieces for it, these hosts. And what I mean by that is just unapologetically Democratic and will not ever address the issues that are sort of lingering, right? And so what you would hope anyone would say is like, yeah, why is this different? We should see all of it then. But no, they went full on Tucker Carlson attack. And here are the 3 reasons. It's a bit lengthy, but I'd like you to hear it. And they say, why do you think that Tucker is doing this? What is his personal angle here? And they came up with 3 reasons. This is Dan Pfeiffer from Pod Save America. Listen.
That's what was happening.
So Tucker could spend his time, his hour every night, lying about all kinds of shit that's more believable than trying to convince people that January 6th didn't happen. Why do you think he has become so obsessed with this issue?
I think there are 3 reasons. One is he is a greedy grifter, and he is in the outrage business. And he gets attention, he gets money from being outrageous. And the thing about being in the outrage business is you have to get more outrageous every day. You have to up the dosage every single day to keep it going. And this is how you get from being angry about people saying happy holidays to great replacement theory and insurrections are good. And so he just is grabbing whatever third rail he can find, he will grab to get attention. And this is clearly one because it is an absolute edge case because there is not among the far right or even among like Fox Primetime, but the general consensus, even among Trump-loving Republicans, is Donald Trump is not necessarily responsible for what happened, but the violence was bad. And so he has to go take that last one on. The second reason is, and we're going to talk about this, he now has a tremendous need to prove his MAGA bona fides to his audience because he's been caught texting about Donald Trump. And so this is a way to do that. This is he is sacrificing the credibility he lost long ago to do this. And the third one is Donald Trump's a front runner for the Republican nomination. There's a very real chance he's going to be indicted for his role in January 6th at some point. And so you're going to have to begin creating a permission structure for people who don't like January 6th, but do want to vote for Donald Trump to be able to do those two things. And one way to do that is just throw a bunch of mud at the thing and make it just throw disinformation at it in the hopes people throw up their arms and say, I don't really know what happened, but I like Donald Trump, so I can vote for him.
Okay, so they think you are so stupid that if you think that Tucker doesn't like Donald Trump, you can't watch this footage because you can only see Tucker as an extension of MAGA.
Which is absurd.
And so if you don't, and so the text bit about him saying, well, I don't like covering Trump anymore. I'm exhausted with this, what have you, is to me makes it more genuine because then he can cover something that he personally disagrees with.
Right. So this idea is that, oh my God, he's a Trump lover. And then these texts reveal that, no, he's
someone with his own personal opinion.
Yeah, and he's covering it impartially, right? But you can't see it. They can't see it that way.
And so if somebody...
and by the way, he's written plenty of articles. He's written long articles in the past about Trump. In fact, he has a very funny article where he talks about how he was critical of Trump multiple times and how Trump called him out on something and hung up the phone on him. Like, Tucker wrote a whole article about that. So this whole idea that he's like some Trump lover, when he's written about it in the past, is laughable.
Yes. And that, that he's trying to give Trump voters an excuse to support Trump because they otherwise have a cognitive dissonance that, wow, I believe January 6th was really violent and awful, but I want to vote for Trump, so I need someone to give me this disconnect. And thank you, Tucker, for that. Again, just making voters stupid and manipulatable and unable to make a distinction between the fact that maybe this guy has a personal opinion that I don't agree with, but is showing me something that I need to see. I would hope that you feel that way about us, that some of our opinions maybe you don't like or you don't agree with all of them, but at least we can talk about things that are uncomfortable and make everything on the table. I don't want any viewers who are like, whatever they say, I'm just going with it. Not going to think about, right?
Like the Rush Limbaugh ditto heads. Remember, that was the thing. They called them ditto heads. Just everyone, anything that Rush Limbaugh said, ditto. And so that was, and they proudly called themselves ditto heads. Like, I we don't need that.
Well, I was going to say, that's the dangers of flag planting. There are people that plant their flag, and no matter what new information comes, they are not going to pull their flag up and move it even an inch to the right or to the left or to the middle or anything because they've already decided what the outcome that they want.
Yeah.
Right. And there may be plenty of things that Donald Trump did to sort of put egg on the faces of his supporters that they can, cling to, but that doesn't mean that people can't see nuance. How many Trump voters do you say, I don't like these things about him, but I feel this, right? Most Trump voters actually can distinguish that nuance. They're pretending that they're not, that they're just sort of mouth breathing, tank top wearing, stained t-shirt troglodytes.
Right. Well, or a basket of deplorables, right? Which is what Hillary Clinton labeled individuals who were Trump supporters. And so it's ridiculous because they can't look past this relationship with Trump. And so on the one hand, Tucker has whatever relationship he has with Trump. I don't really care. And then on the other hand, there's all of this video that we've been kept from seeing.
Yeah.
Now we're getting to see it. Can we look critically on this video as to, number one, why were we not allowed to see it? Mm-hmm. What sort of narrative is it crushing to now see it? And what is actually in this video? Federal involvement, people that are behind bars in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
Without due process, really.
I think
who are being held there.
Apply this to another story. Let's take like Gabby Petito or whatever her name was, that influencer that disappeared and then ended up being murdered or whatever. Mm-hmm. You got the whole country behind a story like that. Imagine if there was video evidence that nothing happened. Then all of a sudden you have video showing a completely different narrative and it solves the case. It's like everybody wants that. everybody should want new information to come to light that shows something different so that we can be educated and move on.
Or not even different. We should just want all of it. Even if it shows us the same, we should not be attached to the outcome, period.
Well, and like we're all attached to the Kennedy assassination outcome, right? And then there was this, then there was word that somebody named Zapruder had actually filmed. And then years later, finally got our hands on the Zapruder film for the JFK assassination. And when that was first broadcast to the American people, it changed everything, right? What we saw that day, what we knew, what we thought we knew, everything now changed as a result of that film finally coming to light.
Yeah.
And now, we can thank that film for the term conspiracy theorist, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. We had a comment this weekend on the piece that I did about the Fort Detrick lab, COVID lab, and someone said, you should never be a coincidence theorist instead of a conspiracy theorist. Like everything that we've just laid out is a coincidence or else a conspiracy. And I love that. It's the opposite of a conspiracy theorist is someone who's like, no, that was all coincidence.
Right.
So thank you to the viewer who wrote that. So later on in this podcast, these two Biden mouthpieces say that they should deplatform basically Fox News because they have legitimized this footage, and that politicians now should just stop, that the Biden administration should stop treating them like a news organization, reminiscent of Canada's Bill C-18, that basically, we shouldn't even try to give any attention to Fox News, especially because their viewers are not persuadable voters. Listen to this utter crap.
First is Democrats have to stop giving Fox full legitimacy. We say all the time that Fox is a MAGA network, propagandist, Tucker Carlson, but in the day-to-day life of most Democratic politicians and political operatives, Fox still exists in this quasi-legitimate place. They get to they're in the network pool. They get to ask a bunch of questions. And if you think that sounds ridiculous, just remember like a month ago, the absurd conversation we had about whether Joe Biden should do a Fox interview at the Super Bowl. What these texts reveal is that Fox and Breitbart are the same thing. So we have to treat Fox like Breitbart. If Breitbart was doing a Super Bowl interview, no one would be like, why is Joe Biden missing this opportunity to speak to the American people through Breitbart? Like, what the fuck are we doing? Right? Stop. We don't, when Breitbart, this is not to say that Fox can't come to the White House. They can't cover things. Of course they can do it. When we were in the White House, Breitbart, the Daily Caller, they showed up in the briefing room every day. And sometimes they'd call our office with questions. You know what we would do? Not fucking call them back because we don't have time to deal with MAGA propagandists. They are as adversarial to us as the RNC. And we should treat them the same way. And Fox is the same way. Second, and related to this, we should stop pretending that Fox is a good way to reach persuadable voters. It's not. And the math is pretty simple. Just think about it this way. There are 2 million people that watch Bret Baier. That's a shitload of people compared to what CNN and MSNBC are getting at the same time. But it's a fraction of the overall electorate. And so let's generously say that 10% of those viewers are persuadable viewers, because the vast majority of all cable news viewers are not persuadable voters. And Fox is even to the extreme of that. So let's say that 10% of the 2 million are persuadable. So that's 200,000 voters. So let's say you're a Democrat in a Trumpy district, and you do have some Trump voters you have to win to be reelected. What are the odds that of the small sliver of your 750,000 or so voters who are persuadable fit in that tiny 200,000 watching Fox at that moment? It's almost zero. It's like the odds of winning the lottery. It's insane.
This seems like an argument to, if you're working in politics, not to put your boss on CNN or MSNBC either.
Well, you would at least talk to some of, I think.
You talking to a lot of persuadable voters on MSNBC?
No, but there's an argument for talking to your base sometimes as well.
Okay, that's utter. I find that so odious.
Which part?
All of it. But one, that there's no use talking to American people if you're not going to persuade them as a voter. So don't even try. So why do they have this podcast? They later go on to say that, yes, we're trying to influence you and voters, but at least we're clear about it. Whereas Fox is not clear about it. And then they go on to say, really, the only reason anyone should go on Fox News is to own them, go on and have a smackdown of a host and then share it on Twitter with your base. That's really the only reason. And that's how it's used.
And the other piece of my big takeaway was when we worked in the White House, the Obama administration, and conservative news outlets would call us, like the Daily Caller, who has a great investigative journalist, by the way, at the Daily Caller, and Fox or other conservative networks would call us, we would not call them back, or we would not call them back because we don't have time for them. Okay.
So we only yell down an echo chamber, nothing else.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is only to go on Fox News in order to like get yourself a shareable clip, in order to elevate yourself to your existing base. And again, I find that to be so insulting to anyone's intelligence, as if we can't really have conversations. It's only just to self-legitimize, period.
Right. Imagine if Biden were to go on Bret Baier and have a great conversation. What he might do to, I don't know, not necessarily elevate himself to conservative voters, but for people who were sort of thinking that, oh, he's a dolt, he's demented, he doesn't. Right. Well, maybe, he seemed pretty salient there. Like, okay, I feel a little bit better about my president of the United States, to an audience that maybe doesn't think that.
And they said the only reason Biden should go on is just to own them, which I don't see in the current mental state of the president at this age him able to do.
There's no owning.
At one point maybe he could have, because he was always pretty wonky in his prime. But I don't see that happening right now. And again, the idea that they're just refusing to say, why does this footage not fit in with our narrative? Let's actually just talk about that and fill in the gaps. And it seems like it's just impossible. Go ahead, David.
And are they suggesting that CNN and MSNBC and all those are legitimate news agencies?
Right. Well,
yes,
I guess
they are.
By omission. Right. They're basically elevating. Yeah. The people that are in that briefing room to ask questions to the president, like those are legitimate. I mean, great point. I mean, we just saw the New York Times issue a huge propaganda piece about the Nord Stream pipeline, and repeated propaganda coming out of the Washington Post and the New York Times and NBC. And so they're legitimate news organizations. They get to ask questions of a president.
Yes.
Well, and it's Fox News, it's Ducey that's pushing the hardest and asking the questions that every media company should be asking in the first place.
Yeah.
It's Fox News.
He's the only one asking actually tough questions, right? Well, there's a few now, but most of the time there's no one else. It is an echo chamber.
No, they take the piss out of Ducey, and they're like, he doesn't even consider himself a journalist. He just asks stupid, provoking questions.
And I think the thing, like listening to this like podcast that you just played, that this, like, what they're really suggesting is we should stop as a country of debating each other or having conversation with people that disagree with us. And so, like, when you end the conversation, you end compromise, you end negotiation, you end finding like that middle point that fits for the majority of us. And what you end up with is just two factions that are at war with each other that will have nothing to do with each other. So, like, at this point, what we need China to come in and mediate our political parties, so that we can, come to peace. Like, what do we need?
Bad idea.
Yeah, like when we go and arbitrate elections in other countries or mediate elections in other countries. Do you want the United States to come and help mediate your election? Yeah, maybe we need somebody to come in and do that for us. There's 100 million people that don't vote in the United States. Here's why. Right. What you just watched is exactly why, unfortunately.
But to those of you who did watch the interview with Tucker this weekend, thank you. I was very excited about it because this is an old friendship that Clayton's had since his days at Fox. I thought it was very heartwarming, and I want to say great job on that.
You.
And thank you to those of you who watched.
It's been my favorite of all the, because of all the redacted conversations we've had, like, it's been my favorite by far because it was just such a like, I've seen it like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Not just in like the initial.
Well, and
I've watched it again because.
Yeah.
I've seen so many comments also on the video where people are like, I generally don't like Tucker, but this has turned me around and I'm going to start watching him again, because it's like there's such a genuine tone to that whole interview. And I loved it as well. Like, I watched it to preview it for edit or whatever. Like, that was just a really good, and things you just never would know about him otherwise.
Yeah.
So great job.
And it's not lost on me. I was telling Clayton, one of my major reactions is when he put us in the category of like us and Russell Brand, which felt very legitimizing and flattering, and Tucker. And he says, these people are filling in the gaps now of what the corporate media is refusing to do. And it's not lost on me that everyone in that group is non-drinkers and has like come to a because I consider Clayton and I non-drinkers, and those two also are non-drinkers, and I just want to sort of legitimize not drinking because it takes an honesty, to like, and I feel like in our lives when we stopped making that a part of our lives, there was it created a lot of room for thought and honesty inside of our lives. And so if you are in that category, welcome. I just want to sort of normalize that, and not around addiction, just people who make those choices,
Or people who grow, right? There's things in your life that from that Tucker interview, you see you grow, and there's things that like you shake off and you realize that didn't serve me anymore. Like I'm constantly waking up tired. I can't give more thought to the things that are interesting in my life.
I can't read a book in bed at night because
whatever it is, whatever it is, we all struggle with. Yeah.
For me, this show, like being on this show with you guys, has taught me to just have different conversations. I don't come in as charged as I used to. I try to step back, listen to the person, and try to have a little bit more empathy than I used to have. Like I'm still pretty, wired, but I'm getting better.
All right.
And I think
we all grow. Yeah. Evolution, right?